Hi, everybody. This is Gerard Braud, and today we're talking about electrical co-ops, their boards, #crisis. There is a crisis going on with my friends in the electric co-op industry, and I'm going to try to provide some counsel and strategic advice to the various CEOs, to the communications teams, as well as to the boards of directors who are elected by the cooperatives. The number of negative news stories that have shown up just recently is pretty frightening. I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through a few of these. Here's one that had been brewing in Oklahoma for quite some time. This is where an executive from the co-op actually got sentenced to 10 days in jail. And years ago, this CEO was accused of doing some things that he shouldn't have done, and his board didn't take action, and there was a petition drive, and the entire board was forced to resign, and the CEO resigned. That's the impact of these crises when you don't do anything about it. Over in South Carolina, Tri-County has just been having an enormous number of problems, and they have, well, here's the headline. It says, high pay and expensive perks, absolute power corrupting in South Carolina. So boards of directors were coming under attack because of their pay and their perks. A combination of their per diem for meetings, as well as the travel expenses that they incur when they go to national meetings of NRECA or any other groups that they belong to, as well as when they're serving on the boards for their power generator, their GNT, and things like this. Here's a headline. I live in Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans. Here's from the Baton Rouge Morning Advocate. The headline says, eye-popping pay perks at Louisiana electric cooperatives spark an investigation. One of the members of the Public Service Commission flat out said in a hearing, you people are taking fancy trips, going to Las Vegas, staying in fancy hotels, eating steak dinners. And he is asking all of the state's cooperatives to give a report to them on their expenditures. Hats off to this cooperative, Claiborne Electric, actually cut their own per diem in advance of a potential crisis. I think that's brilliant, brilliant, because they took action to show accountability and responsibility. Grady EMC has been having some problems. Watch this TV news story.
Today, about a dozen members of the Grady Electric membership co-op protesting for more transparency. They're citing irresponsible spending and decisions being made behind closed doors. Members say that as a co-op, they deserve more of a say in where their money is going.
Here, let's listen to the soundbite.
It's our company. It's the members' company. And we want to know what's going on. We're loaning our employees inside that building there money against their paychecks each week.
So there are a number of things going on that have been making headlines at that cooperative as well, and starting protests. And of course, social media pages pop up with groups who want to have a place where they can gather. So here's what we need to talk about. There are a number of co-ops that need to take a look at their own practices. In fact, I would say every one of them needs to take a look at their own practices. There's no reason not to. I'm going to share with you a 5-step process that I always recommend. I call it the 5 steps to effective crisis communications, because what you're looking at here is a crisis in one city gets news attention, and then it causes reporters at other media outlets in other towns to see that story and to question, could this be happening here? So if I am a reporter in Louisiana and I see the same thing happening in South Carolina that may be happening in Louisiana, I'm going to do a report on that. I was a reporter for 15 years. I know how this stuff works, but I've also been doing crisis communications now for 24 years. And I know how badly things can go south. Ultimately, you can damage the reputation and revenue of the organization. That's how we define crises. Does it affect the reputation and revenue of the organization? Does it cause people to lose their jobs, get fired, go to jail, force resignations? All of these are potential crises for you. So here are the 5 steps. The first is I love to do a facilitated sit down to talk about all the things that could be a crisis. Now, in any electric co-op, you've got all of the various natural disasters and weather events. But these days, social media can trigger a crisis. Protests can trigger a crisis. People upset about rate increases, and as we're seeing right now, people who are upset about per diem and how expenses are done. And you may be doing a perfect job. You may be able to defend in your own mind. You may be able to defend your per diem and your spending practices, but it needs to be talked about in a vulnerability assessment. Somebody needs to help you question whether what you think is appropriate matches what your members would consider appropriate. Now, once you have that vulnerability assessment done, the next step is to have a crisis communications plan. There are 2 types of crises: the natural disasters, power outages, hurricanes, weather, winter storms. Those are sudden crises. A workplace shooting could be a sudden crisis. A smoldering crisis gets into the ethical things. It could be protest. It could be protest online through social media and a Facebook page. It could be people showing up at your annual meeting to ask really hard questions about their rates and the per diem paid to the board members and the perks paid or the expenses when they travel. Look, rural communities, people only make $25,000, $30,000 in many of their jobs. And there are boards who work part-time who make more than the average member makes. So if you don't see the optics of that as a problem, we need to have a conversation. I go to conferences all the time. And, when you go to a conference, you're stuck in the conference room, you're stuck in meetings, you're listening to people like me teach training sessions at the conferences, and you're there from 8 in the morning until 5, 6, 7 in the evening. You're not going out on vacation. I know that, but your members don't. Your members don't get to take a trip. They don't normally go on vacation. So they perceive you getting on an airplane and you going to a nice hotel and you eating in a nice restaurant. 3 things they cannot afford to do themselves. They see that as a huge perk, whereas you see it as part of your job. That is a problem, and those are one of the things that we need to talk about in the vulnerability assessment. But your crisis communications plan needs to be a methodology for communicating within 1 hour or less of the onset of an event. Look, when an event happens, it goes viral on social media. Every one of your members has a cell phone. Everyone's posting things. You've got to have a statement ready for them, and you've got to have it for them fast. A good crisis communications plan should be a step-by-step document that you can read and execute in real time that will explain what the problem is, collect the data, the information, confirm the information, and then give you a pathway to disseminate it. That might mean talking to the media. That might mean emailing all employees. It might mean posting something to your website, posting something to social media. If you have email addresses for all of your members, it means sending that out to your members. Sometimes it means you still have to print it and put it in an envelope and mail a statement out to them. But there are many ways that you have to do that. And the way to do that is with the 3rd step of effective crisis communications, which is a pre-written news release. You see the headline there that says, "Don't talk to the media." And down at the bottom, it says the word "until." Don't talk to the media until you're prepared. I always tell people, don't talk to the media until you talk to me. But nonetheless, in every crisis communications plan that I provide for the co-ops I work with, they now get 125 pre-written statements that can be given to the media, that can be read to the media, that can be used as a news conference, that can be sent to all employees, that can be sent to all members, that can be posted to the website, that can be shared on social media. And ultimately, that's what you need. Now, After that statement is crafted, and all of these documents are a special formula that I use with multiple choice and fill in the blank, but after they're ready, someone has to deliver this to the media, and that requires media training, spokesperson training. Now, normally in a cooperative, someone from the communications and customer service team gets trained, the CEO or the manager gets trained, usually someone who would manage the power outages in engineering, they get trained. Normally there are about 4 or 5 people who go through media training when I'm doing media training. But if it's a board issue, the employees of the co-op should not be commenting on it. Only a board member can comment on a board issue. Only a board member should speak to those issues because the manager, CEO, works for the board. If your board is not media trained, if you don't trust them to go out and say something wise and intelligent, step 4 of effective crisis communications is hurry up and schedule one of those trainings. Trust me, many of the people on these boards are, let's just say, over 75 years old, and they are not always on board with fast communications. These are pillars of the community, people who have been trusted in the community. They're not used to having their integrity questioned, and they take it very personally. And I always have to tell them, it's not personal, it's business. But every one of them that I work with take it personally. And that's hard not to, because someone is criticizing you and alleging you're doing something wrong. And you now have to defend yourself. And if you don't know how to do it in a modern way, you need training fast. The 5th step to effective crisis communications is to conduct a crisis communications drill. You need to go through a 3-hour exercise where a facilitator like me takes you through some serious anxiety so that you can see what a crisis is really like. And I always say this, crisis drill is designed for you to mess up in private so you don't mess up in public. Media training is designed for you to mess up in private so you don't mess up in public. You can't wing it. You can't figure it out on the day the event happens if you don't have a crisis communications plan, if you don't have pre-written news releases, and if you haven't tested it all, if you haven't tested your spokespeople. And in a crisis communications drill, we want to test your spokespeople, and we want to see how you would respond to criticism on social media. It's all part of a realistic drill, followed by a post-drill evaluation. You probably have more questions for me. So here's what I'm going to do for you. There's my phone number. Pick up the phone and call me. 985-624-9976. 985-624-9976. I'm going to end the sharing here, and I'm also going to give you, using this high-tech card, there's my web address, braudcommunications.com. On every page of that website, you have the ability to get more information about crisis communications. In fact, right now, I think, yes, right now there is a 5-part video series on the 5 steps for effective crisis communications. I know your time's valuable. I don't have time to go in depth on all of those, but that 5-part series that you can get for free, you can learn more about it. Here's the bottom line. I love the co-ops that I work with. I've been working with co-ops for more than 20 years. But you got a problem. If you stick your head in the sand and think it's going to go away, you're fooling yourself. You're doing a disservice to yourself and to your members. Problems are on the horizon. Problems could be coming to your co-op, and they're going to come fast. If I can help you avoid and avert potential crisis, call. I'm your guy. My name is Gerard Braud. I'm here to help you. Best of luck.